Well, hey everyone. It's a bit of a cold day, so I lit the old stove off. I wanted to kind of catch you guys up from where we left off. When we left off, I was working on the inside of the hull and cutting down some of those screws that had been protruding out that keep the plywood in place along the inner plywood, because there's two layers of plywood on the hull, and to the frame. So if anything was sticking out down there, I went ahead and cut it off with my Dremel. I'm working right now on putting more of this compound on, which we've talked about. That's the talc and epoxy mixture, and just to continue doing the fairing down. And that's what we're doing. Went ahead and worked on the stem, which is one of my more or less more finicky spots. And I also went ahead and put the epoxy on any of these screws or any of the screw holes that were needing to be filled. I went ahead with that and used my power sander, my Angle Craftsman, which I'll show you here in a minute. But for the most part, I left a lot of these untouched by the Craftsman, because the Craftsman removes a lot of wood at any given time, and I don't necessarily want to scar up the hull trying to remove all of this excess epoxy. Sorry. So I'm going to go back and hand sand a lot of this with my just 50 grit sandpaper and a sanding block. Pretty rudimentary. So just because you can use a power sander doesn't always mean that you should use a power sander. I guess that's the takeaway. I also went ahead and got this seam right in here, right along this area where it was starting to chip real bad, because this is fir plywood, and fir likes to chip pretty bad. It also likes to leave really wicked splinters. I can't tell you how many I've pulled out. But it's just part and parcel of the package. So that's just buttoning this up with a little bit more of that talc and epoxy, and it's coming out really well. Another trouble area, once again, not necessarily a trouble area, just an area that requires more attention, is the transom. Once again, it being a split transom, I have these seams here right along the port and starboard quarter of it, and it just requires some more epoxy to fair these out a little bit better, because before the instructions call for thickened epoxy fillets along here, along the seam, which I did, but it just came out really blobby, and it was very hard to sand, and I didn't want to sand too much of those fillets because I was afraid that I would be compromising structural integrity. So I went ahead and put this compound over the top of it, once again the talc and epoxy, and I let it dry, and I'm going to sand this back out so it's all nice and flush and faired out. So that's next on the docket, or will be next on the docket. But I'm working now along this side, and there's my Craftsman angle sander that I have, which is an orbital sander, and it works great. Big fan of it. I use this probably hand over fist more than any other. And it does a great job. It's got 40 grit paper on it right now, so it's pretty aggressive. And once again, it does a great job of fairing out the big blobs and all that. But the problem, though, is that it will eat up the plywood, and it just kind of leaves these nice big circle indentations, and I don't want that. So that's why I'm going to hand sand, or get out my block sander, my old school 50 grit hand sander, and just go to town on all of this. And that's kind of what the plan is for the rest of it. So unless of course I have a nice big goopy pile of it that I don't want to spend all day hand sanding, I'll get out the Craftsman. But like I showed you on the other side, we have some more up here that have been filled in and are ready to be faired out. And this side of the stem's looking pretty good, so I really didn't goop that up. I think I'm going to kind of keep that the way it is. I'm pretty proud of that. Few little nicked up areas up here, once again, thanks to that wonderful Craftsman Just got a little too aggressive with it. It's probably more me than the machine, but nonetheless, it is what it is. All right, so I will get this done, and then we'll move on to the stem and the transom fairing.